I just discussed that same figure. Okay.
You look so good. I love this. Good job, boy. Go ahead.
We'll call this meeting to order. It's a special call meeting, and this meeting is to discuss a bid that we had on the flood pumps. I'm gonna call the meeting to order, and I'm gonna ask Ms. Smith to read the roll call, please.
Councilmember Feldhouse.
Here.
Councilmember Ewing.
Present.
Councilmember Hale.
Here.
Councilmember Christie.
Here.
Councilmember Isaacs. Councilmember Turnbull.
Here.
Mr. Mayor, you do have a quorum with 5 members present, 1 absent.
Thank you. Okay. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda? Has everybody had a chance to look over the agenda, the bid on the flood pumps?
Make the motion.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, right, Lisa? All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay. Do we have public comments? Anybody signed up for public comments today?
We didn't have anybody sign up, and I don't see anybody wanting to make any. So.
All right. Thank you for that. Okay. Our business item today is a consideration of a motion to award the bid to purchase the flood pumps based on the recommendation of the bid committee and the city engineer. I'm going to ask Mr. Alcorn, right? Owen, I'm sorry. Sorry, I just call you Will. That's fine. Will Owen, okay. Mr. Owen, if you would kind of enlighten us, and you have a sheet, or a couple of sheets there that tells about the dollars and cents if y'all want to look at it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
On October 18th, we opened bids for the 3 flood pumps and 3 variable frequency drives that control those pumps. This is for the equipment only, not for the installation, as previously outlined when we presented the flood pump report. There were 3 plan holders, and we received 1 bid from those combined 3. That total bid was $1,830,000 from Southern Sales and Concarva Machinery out of Nashville. If you'll turn to the second page, in that flood pump report that we presented a couple months ago, we also had an opinion of probable cost for the entire project, which would include the installation and just the whole 9 yards, if you will. What we bid on October 18th was item 1A, which is outlined there in red, the pumps and the motors and the VFD starters. 3 of each of those. We had estimated a total of those items to be 2.7 million. So the bid that was received October 18th is certainly within that budget item or that estimated cost, and is a very good number from the estimates we have put together. The timeline is the third page that was in that report, so just wanted to kind of keep that in front of everybody so everybody has an understanding of the project. We are so October 12th, 2023, your last regular meeting was when we had anticipated presenting these bids. Due to some advertising restraints on the timeline, you'd have to push back to the 18th, and that's why we're before you today. We're still well within the schedule that has been outlined. One thing that I would like to point out, the contract that was bid on the 18th was for 399 calendar days. So that's how long it'll take to fabricate those pumps and those motors and those drives. That puts us into roughly December of 2024 when those pumps will be ready. So we have some flex time if for some reason that fabrication takes longer than anticipated. Our schedule was not anticipating starting of construction until April of 25. Okay. Primarily because you don't want to start a flood project in the middle of flood season. So that's kind of where we're at there. We will start upon your decision today. We will start developing a contract for the engineering design for the phase 2, which is the installation and the remainder of those items that are shown in that cost estimate. And we will get that before you at your November meeting for your consideration on that contract for that design. Other than that, I would recommend approval to Southern Sales Tencarva for the bid in the amount of $1,830,000.
Any discussion from the council? Any questions for Mr. Owen? Anyone have any questions about that? We discussed it a little bit the other day in the bid committee, but any of the other folks have? That's great to save that money, isn't it?
I had one comment.
Okay.
Will, did you tell us that the only actual money that we might spend this fiscal year would be 15% of that, or did I misunderstand?
That's correct.
So I would be coming back for a budget amendment at some point this year, because I think that's all we may have to pay out this year. Maybe some of your fees plus the 15% of that.
That's correct.
Just so y'all know what's coming as far as money wise.
From a fiscal year expense, the bulk of this contract, the 1.83 million, will fall into not this current fiscal year, but the next.
Probably around 350,000 or so in a budget amendment.
What's their name again, Will?
Southern Sales?
Sales?
Yes, SALES, and Tencarva Machinery. And I've worked with them on numerous other projects in the past, and they're good to work with, and have a good reputation, so please.
Well, it sounds really good. Any other questions or any other discussion about anything? Okay. Mr. Owen, we appreciate all the work you've done on that. Thank you so much for your report.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. We will need a motion to accept that bid. Do I have a motion?
Motion to accept.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. On this, we'll need a roll call, please.
Okay, the motion is to accept the bid and authorize the purchase. Mr. Turnbow, you good with that? Mr. Hale?
Yes.
Okay. Councilmember Feldhouse?
Yes.
Councilmember Ewing?
Yes.
Councilmember Hale?
Yes.
Councilmember Christie?
Yes.
Councilmember Turnbow?
Yes.
Motion is approved.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay. Any announcements to make in this meeting? Okay. Do you have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Let's adjourn this meeting. Okay? Thank you, gentlemen, for coming. Okay. All right. All right, we'll call the workshop agenda meeting to order. And we'll ask for public comments. Still, do we have any?
I do not believe so, no, sir.
All right. Our discussion item today is a review of the City of Shelbyville Municipal Code concerning animal control. We have our Deputy Chief, Brian Cruz, Police Department with us today, and we'll ask Brian if he would come forward and kind of give us an idea of the review on that, please.
All right. As you'll recall, about 6 weeks ago, we gathered here and you were presented some ordinances that we were recommending for you to take a look at, familiarize yourselves with. And we're here today to get some feedback from you to see what your thoughts are on amending Title III, Chapters 1, 2, and 3 as it relates to animal control for the city of Shelbyville.
Okay, I remember that when you sent that to us. Any discussion or any questions for Deputy Chief Cruz on that? With the number of people, I think we discussed, with the number of people that you have now, you had one out and maybe two folks being able to work. Are you going to be able to handle if we change this? Are you going to be able to handle it? Or are you going to have other personnel? I think you mentioned that before.
At minimum, I believe we need to explore looking at a part-time kennel tech.
Okay.
And one thing that's brought that on, increased the need in that, and I think some of the other department directors could have spoken to that as well. We used to just about be guaranteed an inmate laborer every day.
Okay.
That has changed ever since COVID. We do have inmate laborers, but it's not on a consistent basis.
Okay.
So we're not able to depend on that labor day after day. And when we do have that, we can work alongside them to maintain the kennels. And it allows our officers to go out and work on the enforcement and the calls for service. But, when we're running a number of calls that we are running and trying to maintain the kennels in the manner that I think we all expect them to be kept, it's a burden on us to try to keep that up. And just I did have some information for you that I think is something that you should consider. Comparing our agency to Bedford County Animal Control, they have 3 full-time animal control officers, 1 part-time administrative assistant, and 3 part-time kennel techs. At Animal Control, we have 3 full-time animal control officers, 1 part-time administrative assistant. To put that in perspective, from January through October 20th, when we pulled these numbers, Bedford County had responded to 350 calls for service, where our agency had responded to 849 calls for service. So
How many was Bedford County? 300?
350.
And you have 3 full-time animal control officers and 1 full-time administrative?
1 part-time administrative assistant, and she serves in a function as kind of like a dispatcher. She takes the calls and she forwards those calls to our officers so that they can go out and answer those calls for service. That position was one that was somewhat created. Miss Linda, that's worked out there for a number of years now, used to be the lady that worked on the square when you could mark tires. And when the Supreme Court came out with that ruling, it absolved her position there, and she graciously went out to Animal Control and started answering calls for us. So right now, and just to be honest with you, for the most part of this year, we have 2 employees out there. One is currently on maternity leave. So we're doing this now with 2 full-time employees and 1 part-time. So We'll be glad to get our other employee back, I believe, January, so the first of December, end of November, first of December. So, and then we have, one of our, employees, is in the National Guard, so sometimes he has leave like that as well. But, I think if we could explore one more part-time position to serve as a kennel tech, with the option of maybe evaluating that and looking at bringing that person on full-time in the future, it would definitely help our department with the number of calls for service that we are responding to.
Okay. Question I have, the inmate labor, do they, that's from the Justice Center,
Yes,
and do these provide you one person, or?
if we're lucky, we get one of our employees, when they come in at 7 in the morning, will drive out to the Justice Center.
Okay.
And if they have an employee, an inmate laborer for us that day, they'll bring them back, to the shelter, and they will help with the cleaning and feeding. On a typical day, especially with the number of animals we have in shelter, if you start at 7 a.m. and you clean thoroughly, which you want them to do.
Sure.
That's going to take you up until 12 or 1 o'clock during the daytime. So I think if you have brought in a part-time person and had, 25 hours a week, you could likely get a lot of that work done. We just can't count on inmate laborers to do that. And also, you want them to be supervised, so that they have to be supervised, but you would like for them to be working, hand in hand as they are doing the cleaning, because your employees need to know, does this dog, is it sociable, or is it one that's highly adoptable, or is it one that, is good with other dogs, but can't be around cats?
Yeah.
Unless you have the staff that can do those types of things and try to socialize these dogs, you're not able to adopt them. I know that right now, and we're at the same spot that Bedford County is. They've halted all stray calls and intakes unless it's a extremely aggressive dog or there's a safety issue involved. We are at capacity as well. Our patrol division gets a lot of calls after hours to help with dogs running at large, and we've instructed them to not bring in dogs unless they're aggressive, because we just don't have the space right now. And some of the council members here remember it's not been too long ago when we built a new shelter. So, we're fortunate that we do have some, partnerships that we formed over the years, and have some rescue agencies that do pull from our shelter. If not for that, we would really be in a much worse shape than we are. But the rescue agencies pull as well, so that starts slowing down, and then the population.
Inmate labor, if I can ask a question about that, you may know, but is this voluntary? The person volunteers, the inmate, or does the county sheriff's department provide somebody that's maybe good with animals or something like that?
I don't know that they ever find if they're good with animals or not, but we have had some inmates come out there and be like, no, this is not for me. I'm not going to do this type of work. And they'll, go out and maybe do some of the work with Buck's crew doing, yard maintenance and stuff like that. It's not really a volunteer basis. There's just certain inmates that are currently in the jail that are classified in certain categories that allow them to go out and work. It's just not something that as a city we should depend on, because it's like we have one at the police department, and we've had one now for about a week and a half that's been really good. He's doing a good job washing the cars and keeping the building clean, but you may go 2 weeks and not have someone just because of the classifications, not having enough inmates that are classified in that area. So depending on that is a mistake, because you can't depend on.
They're also on a volunteer basis, even if they're classified to be able to be released. If they don't want to go, they don't have to
If they don't
go.
wanna
It's
go,
not,
they
they don't make them do it. So it is a volunteer thing.
But you do find more often than not, if they have someone in that classification, they do like to get out and
Right.
perform certain jobs, but there are more desirable jobs in the county
Yeah.
than animal
That cleaning.
out of control.
All right. One other question I had on the calls to the county and the city, is it location? Is that who responds? In other words, if it's within the city limits, the city, your folks have to respond and the county doesn't respond? Do you ever work hand in hand, and if you're busy with something, and the county will take them in the city, or does that ever work out that way?
That does not typically work out that way. While we do have a really good working relationship with
Yes.
the Bedford County Animal Control, if they have a significant hoarding case, they may call some of our employees and ask us to assist them. If they have something where they're needing some space in our shelter for a temporary basis, we would obviously reach out. We would allow for that, but answering calls for service is just your jurisdictional lines for the city versus the county.
And sometimes when you need them, I guess you can call on them and they'll help you.
Absolutely.
Okay, very good, very good. Thank you. That's all the questions I had. Council? Discussion, questions?
I think it's important that you recognize that if what we are proposing is adopted, this is significant changes to our current ordinances. So whereas we have not prohibited roosters and chickens in the city in the past, these ordinances do put some significant restrictions on that. So I'm not trying to just come in here and put something before you, but that, without you knowing that, but that is something that, we've heard those complaints. While they're not numerous, those complaints do repeatedly come in from time to time, and they often get to your desk, and then they get to mine. So that's why we brought this before you, for you to consider if the city wants to take a stance and be more restrictive on chickens. And roosters would be prohibited in the city limits of Shelbyville if this set of ordinances are adopted.
You please,
Chickens,
please.
chickens would not be, based on the ordinances that we've proposed,
Right.
in certain residential areas. But it would also be a more restrictive ordinance in that chickens could not just be in the backyard of a residence in Shelbyville. They would have to be maintained in a chicken coop. So that effectively limits the number of backyard chickens city residents would be able to have.
Two parts. Do you mind going over those specifics, what the ordinance says? And two, have you all had time to sit down and think about what the quantity of calls and the impact that's going to have on your department in terms of enforcement? How much is that going to go up? How much hours are you anticipating having to enforce this? And are you just going to primarily go to municipal court?
It would be municipal court, because there would not be a state law that would be applicable in this scenario. So you would be, and it's a $50 fine. So, and we're also not prepared, nor will we ever be in the position to where we can pick up chickens and bring them into our facility, or even on the property out there where animal control is located. So I think that's where we talk about, once we get our 3 full-time employees back, adding that kennel tech that can help alleviate some of the work that they're having to do inside the shelter. The animal enforcement officers can go out into the city and respond to complaints in a timely fashion.
Any idea how many roosters we have in the city?
I would probably say no less than 25, but I will point out.
25.
Unless,
People are going to have to get rid of them.
That's what the new.
if these are adopted,
Yeah,
if these are adopted.
if they're adopted, that's what you're talking about, yeah.
Right.
We don't have a copy of that ordinance, do we? Have we not sent one?
I think,
I've been looking.
yeah, I think it was sent.
It was.
Not been sent. It was not sent recently.
That's okay, here, I can go and make a
I've got a couple of things. One is chickens. I kind of feel like I've had a lot of people actually come to my house to comment about chickens. I think this council needs to vote yes or no on chickens, period. I think it needs to be, and also, when it comes to dogs, the number of cities, and even Canada, remember, this came about 6 years ago, and we actually had voted to do it, and a special committee was formed and changed it, that Shelbyville would be a no chain city, where no dogs could be on chains. And maybe it's just me, but I love animals, and to me, there's just no, to me, you can't justify to me that an animal with a chain around its neck living is good. And I would like for that to be on our agenda, that the council votes yes or no on chains. And I know it's a drastic thing, it may require extra help for a while, or, if so, some things you just have to do it and do whatever it takes to. But to me, an animal on a chain, a dog on a chain to me is just a terrible, terrible life. And I would like to see that for this council, and hopefully, and if you don't agree, that's fine, I'm just.
No,
But, I would like to at least present that to the council today.
I think I'm with you. I don't like to see a dog chained to a fixed object at all. But we all, when we're looking at these ordinances, we consider the cause and effect, and knowing that our shelter is at capacity. And then what, enforcement expectation would the council have on us at that point in time? Would we be expected that every time we see a dog that is chained, that we bring that dog into the custody of the shelter? Then I don't think that we could build a big enough shelter. And
In my opinion, you would cite them and then give them like 30 days to find a home for that dog, or to, and then come back and
and if we were,
and then if they have it, then take action.
if we were adopting dogs out at a higher rate than what we've been able to do, and it's not just us. I know, look, following up with Bedford County and other agencies similar to us. I mean, the rescue agencies are pulling their hair out because they're taking dogs all the way to New Jersey and places up north where state laws are a little bit more restrictive. Spay and neuter laws are absolutely more aggressive. But I don't want us to get into a position to where we are bringing in more dogs than we can ever manage.
And I agree, and I understand it, but but the flip side is, are you gonna punish the animal and say, no, we'll leave them on chains because it's gonna be inconvenient for the animal shelter? I mean, I don't care if you hire somebody extra short-term people, I don't care. The city manager can do what he needs to do, in my opinion, if we need to make special trips to move the, but I think in the short term, it's gonna be a problem, but I think in the long term, it would be easier on animal control if they just simply drive through town and know that animals on chains are not allowed, and they just simply go, say, you can't do this, and I think in the long run, I know it would be better for the animals, and I can see where it could possibly be a lot easier on animal control once it's enforced.
I think once you change the entire culture of your population,
Right.
then that is obviously a possibility. But we do not want to get our staff in a position to where we are constantly having to euthanize animals just for space. And it's something that I know Mariah and I'm somewhat proud of, that we have at times been able to get our shelter recognized as a no-kill shelter. but we need the cooperation of a lot more people in order to maintain that, because that's a very, very difficult to maintain that status, especially when your intake numbers are what ours are.
And, I know this would require, once we didn't require advertising, and we need to
Right.
put the word out to
Right.
everybody, and,
Absolutely.
if we have to form some people, and I'll volunteer to go around and actually help whatever we need to do, but I just think that Shelbyville would be a better fit. And I'm sure all those animals would be better off if we could do this.
I think,
But that's up to everybody. It's just it's a pet peeve I've got, and it may not be that's the reason I think we ought to have to vote and let the majority of the council decide how. Because it may just be, I may be in a minority.
Brian, do you know how many we have on chains?
I would say no less than 100.
I would think it'd be not, right. I was gonna say 150, so I mean, but I think you would get to know those dogs as those complaints came in. I mean, without that ordinance that prohibits that, you only get calls when, it appears that those dogs are on a chain and not being cared for, or they don't have adequate food, shelter, water, then we get the calls.
And it's really almost impossible to change the animal's gonna knock over its food and water. It's gonna barely have enough room to get in its shelter if it has a doghouse, because it's longer than that, it's gonna get wrapped around it. So they got them on a short leash there. And, in a lot of situations, I see them on chains, they don't have any shade, they don't have any warmth. Seldom at the doghouse look like it's insulated in any way whatsoever, if they have a doghouse, so. And it's just, like I say, it's my opinion, but I would like to, I would certainly like to see us make a decision on that.
I think, Brian, you've been asked to kind of go over what we had before. If you don't mind doing that, unless somebody else has a question right now. Anyone? All right, Brian, could you?
Just to kind of summarize chapter 3, because that's a new chapter for, title 3, and that's, poultry and fowl. There's some definitions, and then there in 3-302, there are prohibited acts. The following acts are unlawful for any person within the city limits. 1, keeping roosters within the city. It shall be unlawful for any person to keep or maintain any rooster within the city. So adopting this ordinance would prohibit roosters. Currently, that's not in our ordinances at all. 3-302 says residential zones, and I've been working, I spoke to Brian Stevens about this, and I think that this is one that the council should take a little bit stronger look at, unless we go with Mr. Christie's recommendation that we just say no chickens at all, no roosters at all. Then the second would be, it shall be unlawful for any person to keep or maintain any fowl in areas zoned R4, high-density residential, or mobile home park, or any other townhome, multifamily, or similar units. I think that the council could even consider being more restrictive on that, to where it's only allowed in R1 and R2, where you have minimum lot sizes of, tell me what those are, Brian.
15,000 for R1 and 10,000 for R2.
So you would make
Maybe
it,
private homes.
That's one single family and
Single family.
1 or 2 family dwellings.
Do we have any issues with that, like at multifamily units?
not multifamily units. Most of our complaints are already in areas where people have a backyard. Yeah, there's not, chickens that are in a mobile home park, or, multifamily units and stuff like that. So, but that's one of the ordinances that we would say, hey, take a close look at, and what is your desire, for the direction we go in this area. The 3 would be running at large. This ordinance would make it that if they had chickens, it would be unlawful for the owners having care or custody of any fowl to allow it to be running at large on any private property, including that of owners or those having care or custody of the same, or on any public street, highway, alley, park, or other public places within the city. Any fowl running at large in violation of this section is declared to be a nuisance, and the owner is liable via citation. So what we're saying in this, and it would be our recommendation, that even though you have a yard that is private property and it's either fenced or not fenced, that would be deemed running at large unless those chickens are kept in a coop. So that's something, and there are a number of residences in town that there's no coop, they're just a fenced-in backyard.
Right.
And some where there's not even a fenced-in yard, but the chickens are roaming at large. Then keeping in manner such to become a nuisance. No animal should be kept in such a place or condition to become a nuisance. Noisy animals. And then we define adequate shelter. A coop, as defined in this chapter, must be used for fowl only and be well ventilated while also providing protection from the weather and predators. That becomes a problem when you have chickens that are running outside of a coop. It's attracting dogs and other predators to the area. So the run of the coop must be well drained so that there is no accumulation of moisture, must be kept clean and sanitary by daily cleaning. No manure or objectionable odor shall be allowed. And then the coop shall be a minimum of 10 feet from any property line and shall not be in the front yard. So if you're getting in yards that can accommodate this, it's still requiring them to be 10 foot away from the property line so that you're not as close.
But they could be in the side yard.
They could be in the side yard. So. And it also, what's important here is we're not equipped to impound chickens or roosters. So it would not be our responsibility to bring them into our shelter. They would just be a site only enforcement, where if someone's in violation of an ordinance, you would cite them and they would have to appear in city court. So that's kind of a rundown of the new chapter.
And the one deputy chief is referencing is the very last page, page 21.
Yes.
Those with experience that's been on the council before, have you addressed this before, and has there been a feedback, or there's been problems, or I think enforcement was a question that we had before.
And I'm sorry, we do need to talk about enforcement.
Yeah.
But on the residential zones, this just says that it's unlawful to keep them in these high density zones. This may be silly. Do we have any problem in industrial commercial areas?
Oh, I think we would want to consider that as well. I mean, I don't think we would want them in industrial.
So we would need to add that.
Add that.
Okay.
Questions, council members?
What the goal here is today is to get clear direction from you all, and then we will present the ordinance with a possible budget amendment for any extra expenses at the October 30th study session, and then in anticipation doing the first reading on November 9th.
I would add, and I'm not in disagreement with you at all, because like I said, I didn't like the dogs being chained. But that's not what's proposed here. And what I said earlier about additional personnel, I think that we would need additional personnel to tackle that, if that was the desire of the council, more than just the part-time kennel tech. If you agree with that.
And we're depending a lot on either citizens who are neighbors or those kind of things to kind of point out where there might be a rooster or this and that, if we pass,
Complaint driven.
yeah.
I've looked at
Things
some,
like that.
some model ordinances as well, where, cities required, their residents who desired to have chickens to, get like do like a permitting system. That way they, come to you and, basically they're, getting a permit and then they're showing you that, hey, I'm a responsible, owner. And I have a coop, and then we would send personnel out there to look at their coop and then kind of give them the blessing that they could have chicken on their property. So it's not something that we propose that we do. I think it's important that you know, and I know when the complaints come in, they seem to come from the same people to the same people, but for this year, alone from January through October 20th. The Animal Control Division has only received 10 complaints as it relates to fowl. But it may be that, that we have, they come in as a different type of complaint where it could be that they're complaining about noise ordinance or something like that. So, it's not an overwhelming amount of calls that our division is getting about the chickens and roosters.
So you're not having to spend a lot of time on enforcement.
We're not.
But if this passes, it could very potentially
It
raise
very
a
well
lot.
could. And then I think, maybe that certain, residents don't all the time call us directly, but they call maybe their city council member because that ordinance is not in effect right now. So
I was gonna say that under this scenario, there's no grandfathering of chickens. It's not just applying to new chicken owners. We're saying people that currently have them would have to get rid of them. Is that what we're saying?
yes, roosters they would have to get rid of. Under this
Chickens
proposed
that are in these other
ordinance,
areas.
in this proposed ordinance, they could come into compliance by building a coop and getting them into proper enclosures.
The chicken
Or
part, but.
if they are, right, the roosters would be prohibited altogether. So,
Why, I don't understand, Madam Attorney, would the calls escalate to the office if this goes into effect?
Well, people will be reporting chicken, if people don't comply with the rule. If you decide to get rid of roosters
Oh, they would
and
be
to
telling
pen
them.
chicken, oh, yeah.
Okay.
they would automatically be in violation.
Right.
Because right now, they're not in violation of any
Right,
ordinance.
right.
But as soon as this is adopted, everyone that has chickens
That's right.
would be,
I tend to disagree with that a little bit as well, because if you loosen the belt when a person calls the office, and, people don't like to give their information reporting their neighbor, and you've got to give your name
Right.
and blah, blah, blah. People are intimidated. They do not, I like to get along with mine. And, I don't want to report mine, and people think that way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there may be a different technique that we might can use where your neighbor doesn't know you called and started complaining about the rooster. But you would get more complaints now had that, something like that been in effect. Because nobody likes to give their name. And I don't know if you guys go to the neighbor with the bad rooster and say, well, Marilyn next door told me that, you got a hollow rooster. So, I mean, you get it.
oh, I get it.
You have a lot more calls today.
I don't know about that. Because there's not a violation. I think as soon as you adopt an ordinance that prohibits it, then the people know that not only am I calling to complain, but I'm calling to complain because there's something that outlaws this.
Right.
So now,
I don't think people really care about that. I don't think it's that. I mean, they're gonna become this public citizen now. saying, I'm gonna tell my neighbor because they got this and they were supposed to have it this certain way, and I'm the good neighbor, and I follow all of the rules. I don't think that's gonna do that. I don't think it's gonna generate that.
They call now if you've got trash in your yard, your grass is too tall. What's the difference if you got a chicken running
Well,
loose?
well-
Same intimidation. If you're the, want to be the good neighbor,
Right.
keep your mouth shut, let your neighbor do anything he wants.
Brian,
Well,
people don't
a lot of-
require the individual who calls to give their name, do you?
Well,
You might need it.
You can call about it all once and then just say, never mind.
Linda asked
my
me.
name.
Well, they may ask for it, but do you require it? And I mean, and this is kind of scenario, you're gonna be in a position where you actually don't need a witness. It's one thing when somebody makes a complaint and they need a witness. If it's a nuisance call, you need a witness.
right, and that's.
If it's
that
a
would be
flat
the-
out-
If it's just an ordinance violation, I think
They just
that,
say,
that we could drive
this
by and
address?
see. But,
Yeah.
right, like, if, depending on the complaint, there are times when you do need.
well, you have to,
Yeah,
right, a
so-
nuisance.
if, you know, if you're the one that's being annoyed by the offense,
Mhm.
then you're probably going to have to come to court. So you can give your side of the story.
Right, on a nuisance call, but these won't be nuisance calls.
No.
These will be flat out, they
violation.
don't have a coop, or there's a rooster,
That's right,
and it's, all they gotta do is drive by and find it.
right.
Yeah.
Again, I'll ask those that's, been council members, for a while, and Scott, you've been mayor and city manager, and, Mr. Philhouse has been mayor and on the council for a long time, and the rest of you have William and Marilyn and Gary. Is this a good move by the city, or is it something we need to leave?
I think it's a great move.
Think it's a great move.
Yes, I think when I first came, we spent over 2 hours at the police department, we were in there. We had a lot of discussion, and we never really got this far. So I'm glad to see it's come this far, where we're ready,
Okay.
to make a difference on this.
Scott?
Do, this is for the full board, do you all want to just prohibit roosters in accordance to this draft ordinance? Or do you want to go no chickens altogether? And if you go all chickens no together, then you got to take into consideration 4-H projects, Boy Scouts,
Yeah.
a lot of other
Right.
intangibles.
Okay.
We need to know what to bring to you at the study session. That's the reason I'm asking.
Right.
Right now, it's no roosters,
Right.
and that's pretty cut and dry. You want to take it further?
I like the idea of no roosters, and I had a discussion with a person who used to work with USDA and actually several towns and other jurisdictions that came up with ordinances to restrict chickens. And she agreed that roosters are not needed. I mean, if you're gonna be producing that little baby chicks, you need a rooster. Otherwise, you can have all the eggs you want, just chickens. So she recommended in most towns, eliminate roosters completely. When it gets down to the chickens, then you've got a number, you restrict how many chickens you want. Her recommendation was 10 square feet per hen for a coop. So if you want to have 40 chickens, you got to have a great big coop.
Yeah.
If you're going to have 4 chickens, it's a lot smaller. You know, right now, we're not restricting chickens, but I'd say at some point, this is a good start. We're probably going to wind up having to come back. And that's where we got lost in the weeds before on dogs too. How many dogs you gonna have? You know, I know my daughter and my son, they dump dogs on me all the time, and all of a sudden I have 6 or 8 dogs at the house for a week.
Somebody dumped a dog on me one time.
Yeah. His name was, the dog's name was what?
Henry Philhouse.
Yeah, anyway, so that's where we kind of got lost in the weeds for your historical aspect of every time newly elected officials come along and revisit this, it seems like.
Right.
But I agree 100% with William on the chains. I mean, log chains, I think is what we're kind of thinking. We see dogs tied up with log chains,
Oh, yeah.
big heavy chains. I can't carry it, much less they can. And we talked about the dog runs. I can see one on a dog run type thing.
Yeah.
If it's done correctly. And technology's changed now. My dogs are on wireless collars.
Yeah.
So if they get out of the yard, technically it's supposed to bite them and they get back in. It works most of the time, but
It does work.
they still follow us to my brother's house or something every now and then. But, so they go on the lam, and we've got them out of the dog jail every now and then too, because they've got picked up when they really took off, because they got a lab that runs. So I've been on both sides of the fence of it, but at the same time, trying to be responsible. We just can't have the dogs and tons of dogs running like we have now. And it's changing the culture of the community, but got to get used to it.
Well, it's just about being ready for enforcement. It's just about the will of the council, and I think back at the time, Marilyn, when you first brought all that up, I just didn't think there was a will on that council to spend whatever additional money might be for enforcement. But this town's changed a lot since then.
Two things to Mr. Feldhouse's point on chapter 3, under 3301 definitions, coop as proposed in these ordinances means an enclosure with a minimum of 4 square feet of floor area for each fowl. Right. Coop shall not be less than 18 inches in height. So, and then on page 12, I believe, let's see, there was some restrictions on dogs being tethered.
Choke collar and things like that.
Yes. Yes, on page 12, number 2, any collar too small for the size and age of the animal, or by rope, chain, or cord directly attached to the animal's neck, or by a leash less than 10 feet long, or by any leash or tether without swivels on both ends, or such unreasonable weight as to prevent the animal from moving about freely. So,
And that's good, but now if she's riding down the street and looking and she sees a dog on the chain, it's a whole lot easier if it's illegal to be on the chain period than it is for her to have to run over there and see if there's swivels, or if it's got the right kind of rope, or if it's a choke, or if it's whatever. If it's on the chain and it's illegal, it's real simple.
yeah.
And even if they do the other, it's still be inhumane and still cruel. Maybe it's just me that I just feel like I just love to see Shelbyville and another chain city. And then you need to have at least, I'm saying 10 enclosure, at least if we're gonna keep them outside. And that doubles for dogs.
Any other thoughts or discussion on that from the council?
So, I mean, I guess we just have to vote. That's just went back to, I mean, the roosters, I think they're out. Vote chickens, yes or no. Vote how many chickens. Vote square footage, or else go by what you got on your, but I mean, let's make it plain and simple. Let's just, same way with the dog, we're gonna have them on the chain or not. If we are, then we can go with the.
So, based on how the council votes, chapter 3 could be real short. Could be that
Yes.
no poultry or fowl are permitted inside the city limits of Shelbyville, then that could be it. And then I would think that we would want to look at, as far as the tethering and stuff, we would want to look at a rewrite of some of those ordinances for you to consider if we were to disallow the chaining or tethering of dogs.
Both you gentlemen have been with the police department for a long time. What, enforcement wise? What kind of problems you see? A lot of troubles and a lot of problems?
I don't think there's a problem for us, issuing the citations, issues and it goes forward. I mean, whatever the applications come after that, yeah, I know.
paperwork and all that kind of stuff in time, and
If
you
they-
don't see it's gonna be a major issue.
Well,
Somebody could refuse to remove them.
Oh, I think you're gonna need some more help.
I think we,
Question, at least for,
Yeah.
for a short time, and I think, Scott, you ought to just let her have it. I mean,
and
if we vote to be the drastic end of this, if the city votes to go on the drastic end,
right.
then naturally she's gonna need,
Okay.
you're gonna need more help.
And I'm glad that we have our police department. Brian, I know, we've had a lady that was attacked by a dog, did a great job on follow-up on that. We've got to have some kind of enforcement or ordinances and things like that, I think, to operate a city. But I don't want to create any problems. I don't want, I wouldn't want to create any problems, but solve problems, so give a solution.
I will say that, there's only so much that we can do with the
Right.
city court. It's always been a challenge, to, one, the easy part is serving the citation. And that's not always easy, but that's still the easiest part. Things that are beyond our control is one, whether or not they show up for court.
Right.
And that sometimes becomes, you've issued that citation and then they haven't shown up for court. And then,
Or they refuse.
or they refuse to show up for court. And then, let's say if it's a dog running at large, there's state statutes that mirror that,
Right.
that permit us to use an escalated form of punishment. So, if we get one call, on a dog running at large, we may issue a warning, a verbal warning. We get a second call of this same dog running at large, we issue a citation and they appear in city court and they pay the fine, or they don't appear in city court. So, if they don't appear in city court, what we will likely do is then utilize the state law that says, okay, now you are required to show up in General Sessions Court. You've issued them a citation where if they don't appear there, then there's the failure to appear statute that you could use at your disposal. But where this gets complicated is when you start utilizing the state court as a means of enforcement, then at some point in time, that dog becomes evidence. And you've brought a dog into your shelter that you then have to keep as evidence of the infraction. So you have a dog that you've got to make sure is taken care of and kept in a shelter that's already overcrowded for a court date that's 30 days out, that could get continued 60, 90, 120 days, and you've got a dog that you're required to keep in shelter. So it's not as simple as just, writing the citation and then people comply. We have a lot of non-compliance, and we have a lot of times where we have to go, step it up a little bit and try to get compliance, but that still is not always the case.
There's no mirror statute, state law.
Or no, there's not.
Chicken, there's no, I can't just take someone into municipal court and then they don't reply, and then take that same law through his natural channels to general session as a violation of state law. Now, what I could do, you hear this all the time, I can actually enforce city municipal code through general sessions court, but it's more of a civil matter than the route he goes, meaning I file a lawsuit against them to have the general sessions judge enforce the city ordinance and could get a injunction, but that takes time.
And let's just be completely transparent and honest. When we have people there for DUI and domestic violence, and child abuse,
He's not gonna be happy to see
the
me.
judge is not going to be thrilled to see 5 cases of dog running at large on his docket. I'll just tell you. And is it a problem? Yes. but in the big scheme of things, in the general sessions court setting, it's low priority. So, as it should be. I mean, we're talking about the other stuff.
Any other questions or any other thoughts about changing what we're thinking? And we'll discuss it in study session and then we'll move forward from there, correct?
Mariah wanted to speak on the tethering.
Yeah, I'd like to meet Mariah. Mariah, could you come up and introduce yourself? I haven't met you yet.
She has,
Mariah Teal, Animal Control Officer. I only wanted to say I would like you to consider the thought that we only have 32 kennels at the shelter. If I go and see 5 dogs on a tether and have to pick them up, that means I have to euthanize 5 dogs to make room.
Okay.
Well, you don't necessarily have to pick them up, but you gotta issue a citation and tell them to change what you're doing, then you go back. I mean, a lot of people will conform. They may not
I
like it,
don't
and then they,
agree, because we've tried that before. A lot of people simply say a chain is $5 at the dollar store versus a $400 or $500
Right,
kennel,
right.
where they can't afford a fence in their yard, and I think that's been the argument in
then
the
they
past
go.
on our behalf.
They'll make you enforce
Disagree.
it.
My dogs are not on a chain. I don't like it. I agree, but I don't think it's feasible to enforce that in Shelbyville.
well, and one
Oh,
thing
yeah.
that
You can enforce it. I mean,
one thing,
it takes some work, it takes some.
one thing I think we also have to consider is the number of Shelbyville residents who live in rental homes versus on their homes.
Right.
And how often, we're a very transient population here inside the city limits. People move from one rental house to the other rental house. They often go from one landlord who accepts animals to a landlord who doesn't accept animals. That's not uncommon. So when those populations are higher, you have a lot more people who now all of a sudden have a dog, but they don't want a dog. And then their expectation is that now that dog becomes the government's problem, the city's problem. And that's where we have calls all the time for people wanting to just surrender dogs to us. We can't take in owner surrenders when we're already at capacity. And then you run into, well, dog abandonment, where they are just turning the dogs loose. And then we still try to, find that owner. And we usually know because they've already called once, seen or brought the dog up there. But sometimes it just becomes a matter of, hey, this person, they're trying to care for themselves and their family, and they're moving into a home that it's not going to be permitted. The one that we're familiar with, I think the apartment complex did the right thing and finally, or ultimately said, hey, that dog's not permitted here.
Right.
And
That lady had to go to the hospital.
and that dog ended up having to go.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, very good.
but we do have so many people.
Thank you for your information. We appreciate you are hands-on.
Yes.
We're not having to deal with it every day. And
Right.
I just want as much information we could put out for the council.
And
What we
I
can
think
do.
you could see how emotional she
Oh,
got.
yeah.
Because I will tell you that if our employees are coming in every day and having to euthanize healthy dogs, you're not going to keep an employee in that position.
Right.
And because of all what we already have in effect, because of the noncompliance, our euthanasia rate has gone up. It's up to a level that we're not happy with. So we're wanting that to go back down. And I think that definitely has to be taken into consideration when, the quality of, Mr. Feldhouse, you said in the last meeting that the worst job in the city of Shelbyville was in his agency. Depending on the day, I think it would definitely be here.
Okay, can we talk about a couple of other options here? And Supervisor, please.
Thank you, Officer Kale.
I need you
Thank
to.
you, Mariah.
What we can do is I can ask Deputy Chief and Supervisor to work with Kate, get us some budget numbers. We can bring draft 1 of the ordinance that says absolutely no roosters, no chickens, no dogs on chains. And with our treasurer's help, we can put a budget number on what that may be, because it may even, and is this feasible, to expand the kennel somewhat and to maybe even contract with additional adoption agencies. I don't know, I'd have to defer to you all. Then option two would be no roosters and dogs kind of in accordance to this, and that'll be a decision for the council. Do we want to go full, absolutely no tether whatsoever, or tethered under these conditions, then absolutely no chickens, no roosters, or simply no roosters. So we'll have the two options.
Trying to get their
Or a
temperature
voiceless
on the
rooster.
no chickens.
Voiceless rooster. I can see where that'd be a problem. Okay, we just don't want to create any problems, and I know the council doesn't either. Appreciate both of y'all and all the information you give us. Thank you so much. All right, do we have, any other comments? If not, I'll ask for Scott.
Ma'am, I'd like to make one comment.
Okay.
And city attorney's giving me the eye, so I'm not really.
No, I was just asking how they felt about chickens.
Oh.
That was it, just trying to find out about the chickens.
It's really unrelated, it could be said, but then again, I can make an argument this is related because it's a way to get our new ordinance out there. And any other public information we need. If y'all will look behind us, what y'all approved in May is beginning to come up with the YouTube channel. We did take down all the cameras and the lighting, but under the direction of Councilwoman, we're getting ready to have a studio and getting ready to be able to do public access and information a lot more.
Very good.
Thank you,
Very
Scott.
good.
Thank you. And I do want to say thank you to the council and Scott and Kate back there with IT for ordering and Miss Lori, she's not here, but you know, the eyes that laid on all of the equipment. It's amazing that we've got so many things from, I think you mentioned the TVA and Shelbyville Power, where I was thinking it was the grant that was sitting on our item line for all of these years since the 90s. So I'm a little confused on that, but I'm sure Kay will get the message and everything will work well.
Yes,
Yeah.
we're well underway.
Public
Yeah.
relations and getting the message
Yeah.
out there is very important in whatever kind of business you do.
That's right. Now, Scott and Mr. Mayor, you have a recurring guest visit on the show, but I want to say that any staff of any council.
Absolutely, yes, I
I've
agree.
I've got an amazing list of people already that are lined up and entertainment here and that type of thing. So it's going to be very exciting.
I agree. Okay, anything else anyone had? I'll have a motion to adjourn.
Yeah.
Second? All in favor? Adjourn. Get in here.